Good, good afternoon. Welcome to Async API community meeting. Just before we usually we start as usual. Now I'm stressed, Missy. Okay, so the live stream is just started. Before we continue, remember it's a live stream, so you don't have to join live with us on Zoom. You can also join us on one of the social medias that we share the live stream. And if it comes to interacting with us through chat, we only listen to the chat on the live chat on YouTube. And it's community meeting, so welcome everyone. Before we jump into usual agenda, do you have something that you'd like to mention first? Because you're rushing for another meeting, that's totally fine if you want to do it. Okay, perfect. So yeah, let me look on the agenda. So the first topic is something that I'd like to highlight to everyone. I'm going to send a link. So Async API specification is released on a schedule that we agreed with the community. The last release was in April, and then the release from June, we skipped it because there was nothing to release, which made sense to not release. And now the next release window is September, and there are some items that I think will be released so far as I remember. So let me share the link in a live chat and also in YouTube and also in Zoom. So please, if you'd like to be a release coordinator for that release, please join this discussion that Sergio started. Release coordination is it's not easy, it's not technical, it's more about patience and persistence and knocking different doors. But what you get in exchange, you're learning like the whole process. You're understanding actually how spec is being released from the technical point of view, and also soft. In practice, in practice, that's the word.
Lucas, you stopped, you froze for a second there.
Yeah, that's how I feel today, basically.
More like 10 seconds. So.
But am I I'm stopped and you're losing some context, or you can actually listen to everything?
You stopped at soft, and that was it.
Okay. So what I was saying is that if you become a release coordinator, damn it, it's not my day today. So when you become a release coordinator, you learn not only in practice how technically we do the release, what are the prerequisites, what are the crucial dependencies. So you really understand how complex the process is, but you also understand how it looks like from the practical point of view, like the whole process, like who you talk to, who is responsible for what part of the spec. So it helps you learn really Async API in details. So that's why I definitely recommend. So I was talking, and I already saw a comment in YouTube. So Tabak wrote, "I would love to be one of the release coordinator," which is awesome. Just please go into the discussion that I linked in the chat. mention there that you'd like to do it, and not sure what's, because it's Sergio started the discussion, but we already had 3 release coordinators before. It was me, Sergio, and Dale. So we will for sure support. So yeah, thank you. Wow, first item on the agenda done. I mean, yeah, the next one. Do you like, or actually, there's just one. There's no next one. So I'm rather open for questions, like, because I did not plan, for example, to do the update on the Async API conference organization, but because I'm not sure how much people follow the to-do discussion that we have. Do you like, did anyone that joined the meeting expect some updates, or you know what's happening? Okay, that sounds like yes, no, maybe better do it. So let's let me just share some links. At the moment, if it comes to conference organization, so of course we do everything, like all the discussions, we do them in public on GitHub, on community repo. We also have a separate checkup meeting every 2 weeks, and this week is another one on Thursday. So if you're interested and to actively participate in the organization, please join. But from the current things that are active, the most important is CFP, so call for papers. Final extension went to Linux, request went to Linux Foundation. So we will wait until the 2nd week of August, and that's the final deadline. Because then we need people that will review, and then this work on the schedule would be awesome to complete it before the end of August. I don't have access to the information like real time to see how many CFPs we have. So I can just share you that Tuesday or Wednesday, or actually Thursday. I think it was Thursday. Last week, I got email from Linux Foundation with the list, and there were already 13 proposals submitted. But I also know that already few people submitted, because some people do write to me to ask for the process. That's why actually I'm not gonna do the review of the call for papers like last year, because yeah, I advise people too often, so I'm too biased. So that's if it comes to CFP, where we are at now. Currently, also Alejandra, she's coordinating the topic of actually finding volunteers to do the review of the proposals and then work on the schedule. So I'm gonna send you a link to a dedicated discussion about where you can volunteer if you want to help with review of the proposals. And most important is the update, I think, from today from Missy, that went to the conference website. Do you want to show it, Missy?
Yeah, I was actually waiting for that opportunity to jump in and
perfect.
save you, Lucas.
Thank you. So I'm gonna give you a co-host, right?
Yeah.
So basically, another update about the conference is that Missy was working on designs for the website. So let's see.
Okay. I've got a few things open here right now, but okay. So everybody can see this? Yeah, okay. So I was kind of messing with like a little bit of an art direction for the conference, and this is like in the form of a website right now, but I feel like we can use the same kind of art direction across like any other assets that we need for the conference this year. So it's just like kind of just a prototype of what like I was kind of messing around with. Just like, you know, straight up, like, this is what we're doing. You can get more info, and this would probably like scroll down here. there's like a little illustration here that I put together that I think fits with the brand, but could be a good like visual thing to like, you know, use in a bunch of the conference stuff. Yeah, here's just some information like what the conference is. I just kind of came up with any kind of writing, but we can edit that as we need to. A link to the website. Here's to apply to be a speaker and to submit a proposal. And then, oops, this is not refreshed. 1 second. And then here's to sign up for updates. I don't know if we have plans to like send people updates on a mailing list, but I assumed that it would be better just to grab email addresses anyways, in case we wanted to do that. So that's my email, and then subscribe. This is a place where I would think that, you know, our sponsors could go. I think instead of like separating them, like, you know, platinum and gold tier, like we just make the platinum ones bigger and then, you know, put the other ones below it kind of like in a hierarchy sense. So you visually know what's, you know, who's, I don't want to say more important, but who has bigger sponsorship. But this is all placeholder. We have like no set sponsors, I think, yet, right? I'm just kind of using some logos that we had from last year.
Yeah, but I hope the same logos will be visible this year as well, that they will sponsor.
Yeah, yeah. There are a few other ones, but these I just kind of repeated just for visual sake, but I'm sure we can pop in whatever we need to. Button to become a sponsor, which I guess would link out to a separate thing. I think we have like a form for that somewhere else. And then I thought it would be a cool thing to show some of the past recordings from last year, since we did release all of them slowly over time. And here's like some buttons that you can use just to, you know, go right to the videos on YouTube. It's in like a little slider, so we can add as many as we want there. And yeah, then just the footer, we could put some links here if we want to, and then just that button again to add the event to your calendar, and then some social media links. So yeah, that's basically the direction I have for the website as of right now. But I think like with this, we can like always add more to it if we over time like figure out more things. Like I know we still need to figure out like the schedule, and we're not sure how we're going to implement that schedule yet, but yeah, so
iframe.
Yeah, I guess just you're gonna make the website all ugly, aren't you, with an iframe?
So yeah, the submission form, it's awesome to have it there because yeah, we like that's how we started, and we should continue. Like we already collected emails from people that were interested and voted on like where we should do conference, so we will definitely send updates to them. But so future websites like this, we should always have this kind of subscribe call out for updates.
Gotcha. Just for any kind of updates, or just like
if it's
I guess
on
you could put them on a
conference,
separate list.
Yeah, exactly. So if it's on the conference website, it's obviously about conference only.
Gotcha. Yeah. So yeah, that's and then I could share the link to the issue as well. Let me just find it.
The illustration, do I get it right that it's because event-driven architecture, so it's like an architectural stuff, that's why there are stairs and different items?
Yeah, that's exactly right. I guess I also forgot to give some explanation of my creativity for that. 1 second. I can't multitask. It's something that I'm really bad at. I'm trying to work on. Let's see. So I don't know if you guys know what like Barcelona looks like, but it's like very gridded like this. Like all the streets are very like square and gridded. And yeah, so that was kind of like the initial inspiration behind the illustration. But then I was like, oh, how can we make it look like event-driven architectures, and like, you know, but it's still so abstract that you could like do anything with it. But yeah, had fun making that one for sure.
Yeah, I like it. It looks nifty.
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 Like that.
Anyone has any comments?
Looks great.
Thanks, Jonas. Yeah, so I added in the Zoom chat a link to the issue if you want to leave feedback there. I don't know, can you share that in the YouTube chat, Lucas?
Yes, I just tried, but then I sent the same link again that I sent previously.
You're on the struggle bus today, aren't we?
Okay, I finally did it. Shared proper link. So yeah, the website is in progress. CFP is in progress. Venue. Like the last memo I got from Linux Foundation was that this week we should get answer from all the different venues if they're available and what's the price. I really hope it's gonna happen this week, because like it's kind of blocking us to decide how much we should charge sponsors for sponsoring, how much money we need. Otherwise, we're gonna improvise and just ask more than we would. So that's if it comes to the conference. Any specific questions from anyone? Oh. Okay. So regarding other community activities, so Async API mentorship, yeah, not much to share really. It's just running now. I'll ask, like in the future, I'll ask from time to time Ace if he can share some updates, because now it's fully under Ace wings. Yeah. Do you also in English say that something is under someone's wings? Like that he's taking care of something?
Yeah, he's taking it under his wing.
Yeah, wing. Yeah, okay. So it's the same in Poland. Okay, cool.
Singular, maybe. Yeah.
So yeah, it's under his wing now, and so I'll ask him if he can share some updates in a month or so. If it comes to ambassador program, there was final polish done by Barbanio yesterday, I think, or today. So it's almost not merged, actually. It's almost submitted for voting of TSC. So it's doing good. And yeah,
I know that she's in the process of getting pricing for the ambassador swag as well, the t-shirt design with the community gardeners. So
oh yeah, because there's this depending on the color details, right? Yeah. So Swag Store is also super advanced. But yeah, it's we're never committing to any date, so we're not gonna say when it's ready. Especially that it also has to be submitted for voting of TSC, because that's expensive. And by the way, Barbania is listening in the background, and she wrote a comment that she loves your design, Missy.
Oh, thanks, Barbanio.
Okay, so that would be it from my side if it comes to different activities. Most important is that in 2 weeks, you're not going to see my face, finally. So I'm next 2 weeks, I'm out on holidays. If there's anyone watching this recording and is based in Ireland, let's sync, because I'm going to be in Ireland, so maybe we can exchange a few beers. And so in 2 weeks, the meeting will be still hosted. Again, morning time for EMEA, that's how we say it, right? Yes, you know what I mean? Like EMEA, like Europe, Middle East, Africa, EMEA, the abbreviation.
Oh, I think I know what you're talking about now.
I think that's this abbreviation, right? Can you see in the chat?
Maybe? Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, morning for Emma, Jesus. And Ace will be the host. I asked Ace if he can replace me, and luckily we have a replacement. Any final questions?
I do have something else to share if we have the time.
Definitely. Yeah, we have 40 minutes.
I think I was working on I don't know if anybody saw, but it was the payload object for the spec documentation output. I was working on a visual of that. So I guess let me just share my screen again. I'm not sure if anybody saw this in the issue, but I like posted a video explaining kind of like the idea behind it. But essentially, like the context, I guess, is that I don't know if anybody's seen like the output of the payload on the async API Studio or using the async or the HTML template generator. But I think that there's a huge problem with like just how it is visually getting outputted. I think it like could get pretty confusing. So we're just trying to come up with a new idea on how to structure it. So this is kind of like an idea that I have where things are more rendered like in line. So it's easier to see everything of the payload structure. And then let me go to so this is like the prototype, but and then you'll see like this little underline of the type of what item line. I don't know what the technical term is for that, but when you hover, it'll give you like an info window of what format it should be in. And this could include other things like if you need to define like a certain set of values, like if it were a number from like 0 to 100, for example, it could show up underneath that format as well in the same window if that's what we needed to do. So that's like an idea to kind of limit or just like visually deliver that information like a little bit more easily, I guess. And then as far as like objects goes, I have this idea of like having like we already kind of have this where it like toggles down, but I think that having all of the items in line like somewhat makes it like a little bit easier to read. I know that Magic was like saying that having it too much in line could get really complicated because in the past we've like we had that in like a earlier rendition of this, and it just like got too complicated. So my idea was like making it in line, like the most important information would be in line, and then whatever else needed to fall below that would fall below it. Like, for example, in this from user object, we have a markdown description. So something that's like a little bit more longer of a description would render in a block like this. And then something like this would be more of just like a string description. And that's kind of the question that I had in that channel before. Lucas, I think you responded to it where I was like, can you like check if it's markdown or whatever, so that it would just conditionally replace it this way. And then when you expand this description, it'll render the markdown for you in the component. So yeah, this is just like the basic implementation that I have and was going to iterate on it more, but just wanted to know if anybody had like feedback on it.
So question. So because like now we show format out of the box, now it's going to be on Hoover.
Mm-hmm.
What about the ID of UID of the object?
Isn't that just oh, the UID? I think we mentioned that that's not relevant for a payload, I don't know. Fran had mentioned something to me where like the UID that gets rendered is like kind of like more for like a schema or like referencing the schema, right? Am I right? Or no?
I mean, it's debatable. Like it depends on the audience of the docs, right? So UID from someone that is gonna write code, I think it might be interesting, especially with code generation. It plays a really critical role.
Gotcha. Okay.
But Jonas has a different view because he's making a face.
I have, but it's like that's gonna be a complicated discussion just for the design purpose. So, but I agree with Lucas that it would be great to have the name/ID of the payload. But we still need to remember that it's generally whenever you define something with the payload, you don't define the structure. This means that technically, even though you define a property with ID, it doesn't mean that there necessarily is an ID property because the way the validation rules work. So this means that technically you need a design for each format that you can define payloads with, if that makes sense.
Well, are you talking about like the schema of the payload? Like if you're reusing schemas?
Yeah, so by default, for example, the way that the current I can't actually remember if it renders this. But for example, the React component at the moment, it renders, for example, additional properties are allowed. And I'm not sure Magic, does it render the not keywords or the not validation rules? Does it render that as well? And the if and then and else statement?
Yeah, also.
Yeah, okay.
All keywords from Json schema.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's like a note that I got from Fran when I was talking to him about it. The next step is going to be like figuring out how all of these like JSON schema rules would fit into like, yeah, a visual like this.
Yeah, and that was kind of my point, that if we can have a design for JSON schema, one for, it's kind of the same, the async API schema object, it's kind of overlapping, and then one for Evro, and whatever other payload schemas that's allowed. Because at the moment, the way that everything works is that the parser converts all of the schema objects or all of the schema formats to JSON schema. But it also means that you are displaying maybe incorrect information or not the entire information that the user wants.
Gotcha.
And I'm not sure if Magic have anything from that point.
Yeah, you say that at the moment we everything convert to the JSON schema, Avro, RAM, etc. Yeah, and sometimes it can be a problem to display some values. As I remember, the Avro or RAM parser add information that the integer can have probably the min value as something like the minus 2 million or something like that. Yeah. So yeah, it can be the problem.
Yeah. And I also I know that me and Magic talked about it at some point where I had a use case where I really wanted just the payload, like design component in React, because I had other use cases where I would love to just show the JSON schema that I had without async API anywhere near it.
I see.
So,
yeah.
So this means that if that could be completely decoupled from So basically the async API React component just installs this async API JSON schema React component and uses that. I can, in my tools or in my website, I can use the same underlying component, and everyone else that want to render this JSON schema can use this React component.
Would that essentially become like tooling for JSON schema though? Like, like, are we crossing over territories?
I wouldn't say that, because JSON schema don't want tooling in their organization.
Interesting. Oh, okay.
Generally don't want to.
And then actually we had some inquiries for if there are plans to have the component that renders schema as something that people can use directly without async API component.
Yep.
But that's not design related, right? It's because technically we will go there, right? I mean, in the end, that's the plan of the design work, and this, I don't remember the technical term, but basically that's the goal, to have a gallery of components, right?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, yeah, I think that like what Jonas is saying is like to just like take apart, like actually create like a component, like visual output for JSON schema itself. And then like we could use it in this payload output, right? Isn't that what you're saying? But we could also use it across like other projects that we need it for. And I could see that useful for a bunch of different things. Like if it's open source, like maybe people would just use that in their own projects for whatever.
I agree. And it also makes it a lot more easy for us to have one design for JSON schema, one for Avro, one for JSON type definition, whatever other formats, protobuf, whatever we have in the future on support. That makes it a lot easier for the React component or async API at least to just reuse other components that everyone can help gather around, because then you have the entire JSON schema community helping with that specific component, and then you have for the other ones as well, right?
True. Yeah. I mean, would it be safe to say to like start with JSON schema and not like others? Or yeah, because like we can't do everything at once. So I would say like, is JSON schema like the priority, you think, to create a component for that?
Yeah, because it's just plug and play, right? Because you can remove all of the code that's in the React component currently and just not just move it out, right? And then reference it.
Gotcha.
And then it would work in place of whatever we have currently, because then we still have the parser that interprets all of the payloads or schema types.
Gotcha.
Just to confirm, that's the scope of the design system, right? To have an ability, like to have a set of components that I can combine and use as one big component. I probably have it pre-configured, but also I'd like to have just a component that only displays info about the app, and then I can use it separately, directly, right?
Yeah, I mean, I have this idea of creating like, so this like smaller portion, like this payload, like documentation output is part of like a larger project called, that I'm like calling it Docs UI. So I guess like what you guys are saying with the JSON schema, like making components for that output that could essentially be like nested within this and decoupled, like you're saying, I guess would just be part of that whole Docs UI like project. I'm not sure though. But I mean, it would still be rendered in like some kind of or it would be created in some kind of package so that it would be easy to use it across different things instead of just, within this thing. So,
okay.
But I mean, as far as like with JSON schema, like aside, or just like, that kind of stuff, like, do you think this is in the right direction, or should we like, kind of deviate from this a little bit, or does the way that this is like offering the information, would that seem useful to you guys as developers, or I'm not sure.
Like, so the question is like, so when you hover on string that is underlined, you get the format, but then JSON allows you to put more details like minimum, maximum, or enum of possible values. So do you have examples for how would
Yeah, I mean, so essentially we could put whatever, like I have that idea for this or this, and that could go like, if we wanted to put that like within this, it's not going to work right now, but essentially it would be like underneath. I don't know if you can like envision
it would
that.
be a part of the same pop-up basically.
Yeah, it would be in the same
Tooltip.
like white container, but it would essentially just stack if needed, or whatever, however layout we determine. But I mean, I guess how complex would a window like this get? Like how many different things can you define within one property? Like I assume that it wouldn't get too hectic. Like you would probably have one or just like one or two of these, right?
I mean, you can have you can have format, you can have, you mean that you would
like
not
format
using...
and accepted values is what I guess I'm saying. Like accepted values could look like something like a string or a number with a minimum and a maximum or whatever. But then you could also add values, right? Is what you're saying. Like there's accepted values after, like the third, like first two have to be these strings or something, and then the third could be any string or any integer, stuff like that. I guess it depends on the specification, but
yeah, but as far as I know, yeah, you would have two maximum.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. That's why I was like, maybe just like a window would save space instead of us trying to like cram everything into a line that gets like so complex. But
yeah, I guess it all depends on the schema, right? Because the
yeah,
schema can be extremely nested and complex and make it, I mean, it's gonna be impossible to make it pretty if the schema
right.
itself is constructed really not poorly, but if you really are using the different validation keywords that there is and nesting all of the things, then it's probably not going to be as pretty as you hope.
Yeah, that's why I guess I'm like gonna look at some like use cases and see how I can apply those use cases to a design like this. So if you guys have anything that I could see or use that gets pretty complex, that would be great.
I think that in the JSON schema community, there was a discussion where they at some point of time started collecting the real life examples. Jonas, you remember, like when I think they were, at least they planned to collect example JSON files, and they were especially targeting the complex ones. So you can definitely try to ask Ben from JSON schema.
Okay.
There's also this hashtag whatever JSON schema channel name that we have on Async API Slack that is connected with their Slack. So ask there.
Cool.
Because JSON schema can be super complex.
Yeah, for sure.
I have an idea, but it's probably a stupid one, but this definitely gonna pressure your design thing to the
That's
limit.
okay. Let's hear it.
If you design the message payload to be an async API object and using the schemas that we have currently in, I linked the specific file, then you're gonna have to render the entire async API spec in validation rules.
What do you mean by that?
So imagine that I'm sending you an async API document. That's the payload of our transaction. That is the schema that validates all of the versions of async API with all of the underlying JSON schema files that's validating the message payload. So this means that with this schema, you can send me any version from version 1 to version 2.4, and it should validate accurately the message payload.
Okay, you just mean like validate the JSON schema and the payload, right? Well, it is JSON schema, but
yeah. And it's
I don't think I got it.
it's yeah.
You're referring to our
Yeah.
JSON schema for Async API, or
Yeah. Jonas means that the MISI can try to render or yeah, JSON schema for Async API in the component.
yeah, I forgot that actually we have complex JSON schema for Async API.
Do you understand MISI or?
I don't. I know what you're saying, but I guess I've never seen that before. I mean,
Okay.
is there like some link to something that I can read?
Yeah, so the Jonas just sent in chat a
Oh.
link to JSON schemas. So basically, we also create JSON schema for Async API, so to make validation of Async API documents easier.
Okay.
And it's complex, and it's good source of different complex structures.
Gotcha. Okay, cool.
That will definitely stress test the design
Okay,
component without a doubt.
cool. Yeah, I will read through all of these schemas. Yeah, I think I know, like I was seeing like the ones that are supported currently in Studio, like the cases. Like I mean, I think the important thing is like, obviously we're not going to be like getting every edge case out there. Like, I think it's important to like stay focused on maybe like the normal use cases that we see all the time first, and then we can start to like support edge cases. That's like something else that Fran and I were talking about, because we don't want to block ourselves from like pushing something that would be useful to most people.
I mean, the most important is to not have any regression in the UI. So we should definitely support what we already support.
Yep.
And this is the problem because we support every keyword.
Gotcha.
I mean, yeah, but you know, we render something like that. That if we exactly render the if as the JSON schema, another JSON schema. Yeah. We don't, you know, make some serialization of schema to then render in the nice way. So yeah.
Yeah, so you're just basically one-to-one displaying.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And in some cases, it's not very good to read.
Yeah. But that's also a different discussion, like because we also have in the past community talking about also merging one of all of, I mean,
yeah.
And how to display it. That we should try to do it.
I mean,
and what Jonas said, like we are not showing in the docs. I mean, I think it actually is important feature to show. Okay, we React component operates on schemas converted to JSON schema. But like the user would like to see another schema in the end, right? So there should be in the future some button that they can click and see the original schema, at least. Let's say copy paste wherever.
Yeah.
But from what I'm looking at now, when you're showing, so and after the discussion, so basically what you want to do is like now we display everything, like format information, minimum, maximum, like everything, all the details we put on the UI, and you want to do minimal UI, and then everything additional and extra data should be on demand. So you don't see the format. You have to hover to see the format. And now in current UI, you see the format, right? So you basically want to reverse this approach to the UI. You want to hide the details and show only the minimum information, right?
I mean, I am only trying to interpret like what the main like important information is. But if you guys think that all the information is important to see like right away, then we could have everything. But I guess because they are interactive components in the end, like as in like obviously like if you print it on a page, like on a piece of paper, like you're not going to see all of the information, but they are like interactive components. So we should like lean on some of these like interactions that we can use in order to like keep everything visually digestible. Because I think that's like maybe one of the biggest problems is because it can get very complex that you might see everything all at once and it just like is like visual overload, what am I looking at kind of thing. So if we don't want to hide things like this, that's like I guess that's another discussion, but I'm really just trying to like make sense of what we should do based on like what the needs are of like async API users. So any kind of information that you guys have is like useful. And I mean, I'm just a designer trying to understand like what we need to do. So
I think there can be different levels to it as well. Like it kind of depends on what you want to see, but the problem is that if you decide to not show something, for example, if validation rules, if you not show them, there might be something within those validation rules that renders a property unusable, for example. So,
but you mean like not showing them off jump, or like what do you mean?
So for example, you can have a schema that if you list all of these properties, then for example, send, let's say that you don't want the send property if the HTML property is set, then you wouldn't want that as part of the payload. That can be done with the if validation rules. So this means that with JSON schema, you don't really define that there is a property, or you don't define that the payload has this property. You define that if there is this property, then validate against this, but there's all of these other validation rules that might render this structure unusable or not make sense. So that's why we can't see this structure that you're showing here as structure, but it needs to be shown as validation. Like it needs to validate that if I see this property, then validate against this. And it's all, I'm not going to say it's impossible to design, but it's hard to explain in like a design component.
Mm-hmm.
But that's,
so you're saying that like if we wanted to validate against like for example this HTML property, that sent wouldn't be shown in the payload schema? Like we wouldn't want to show it at all in the payload?
I can try.
But somebody should know that, like a developer who's consuming these this documentation should know that we're validating against HTML.
Just give me 2 minutes and then I got an example.
Okay.
Counting started.
You can discuss other things.
No, just 9 minutes left, so no more threads into discussion.
Yeah, this is a discussion that could go on and on and on and on and on. So,
but could we have 2 modes for render the the additional metadata? I mean, with this tooltip popover, or the second one, that you everything render under the descriptions, as we have in the current React component. Yes, that on the left you have the name of the property, and on the right you have all data, descriptions, format, the another constraint, mean length, etc.
What are you asking like specifically?
I mean, this was a question, yes? If we can have two modes of rendering the, this payload, the JSON schema.
Oh, you mean
In
like
this
a
way,
toggle, like a toggle in Studio
Yeah.
to like render
yeah,
like
exactly.
what am I saying? A minimalistic view versus a detailed view.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. By this minimalistic, you will have this popover on the type, which all constraint. But with the
Mhm.
complex, you will have, rendered everything in one view.
So we mean
That's
like
a good
like a
idea.
property for the component. Or,
Yeah, exactly.
or toggle, because it's
Yeah,
mean-
it's like a toggle, right?
Yeah, toggle. You can set in by the state or by the prop to the component. Yes.
okay.
So yeah, so you can change it. It's only idea. So
No, I think it's a good idea. If we feel like that's something that's like most people would want the option of changing, then I think it would be useful to add something like that. Yeah, I also want to test like how this would look as, when you get pretty complex with the nesting of the payload objects, like how would that look like 5 times in, for example? And I think Fran also mentioned like how do we illustrate like what an array would be like, or I guess, I don't know. Like if it were an array of objects, but they could have different schemas, stuff like that.
do you mean the union type or the nested JSON schema?
Like I guess any nested objects. I think I'm trying to remember what he was saying, but he's saying like in JSON schema, you could have different like schemas in an array of objects. Like each object in that array could have a different schema.
Yeah.
So we need to figure out like a way to document that as well. So
Okay.
just more complex things to think about.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, if you have the array, I mean, the array type, so it means that you have some items in the array, yeah? So for
Yeah.
each element, you can define the another JSON schema, the another shape.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
at the moment, as I remember in React component, to render is like the properties, but we render it not like here, something like the from user, but something like the 0 index, first index, second index.
Yeah. I
Something like
think I do remember seeing an example that Fran was showing me about that. Yeah.
Jonas, how you doing?
I'm pretty good. How are you?
Okay. I think you know how I am. So in the meantime, Missy, I will recommend you, I just pasted in the chat this person,
Okay.
Ludovic. So
Yes.
so definitely engage with him, because like when you drop a message, like not everyone sees the messages in general, but he's a TSC member that is like now maintaining the Avro parser that parses schema to JSON. But the most important is that he also contributed to HTML template before it became the same as React component. And he contributed parts important, like for example, the UID. And he contributed it because there was a explicit request he got from developers as far as I remember, because so Ludovic, he's working for a company that works with another big company that is doing they have like a bunch of teams. They share like for them, critical is documentation because they share their API documentation with other teams. And the
Okay.
schema, like schema is the most critical for them, like that it has to be accurately displayed. So definitely like check with him, maybe even set up a call, because I bet that he will have some good insights. And maybe even if you ask him, maybe he'll test it with his folks, your new design. I think he would
Okay.
have good inputs, because like
Okay,
he's doing
great.
it, like he's using it in practice really.
Okay, great. I'll get in contact with him. But I see Jonas has his example ready.
It's rough, but it's there. Can I share my screen real quick?
Oh, sorry. That.
No worries. See if I can share. Low-KS. I need, no mind.
You don't need, I just gave you.
Okay, so what it's fucking stupid schema, but it's possible to do. So let's say that you want to validate against an object, and it has two properties, send and HTML. Now, if the HTML property contains test, then we do not want the send property to be there. Because this is kind of like runtime, what we call runtime. Like when you run the program, this should be validated, but it's almost impossible to do before you run it, to know exactly like whether it's valid or not.
Gotcha. Okay.
So this means that at this point, this is not possible to do because it violates the not keyword.
Right.
Here. But it's perfectly fine to do this.
Yep. Okay. Or if you were to change the first constant to, yeah. Got it.
That's what I mean by this is validation rules, and not, you don't define the structure, you define validation rules with JSON schema. And that's
okay.
And it's fucking complex because it's just how it is.
No,
and
that's fine.
It's causing so many problems down the line, but that's another discussion.
But I feel like if we can find a way to automatically document stuff like this, that's game changing for a lot of people, probably.
Yes.
Okay. Cool. Thank you.
And even though we should finish, like just throughout the whole discussion we had, Missy, just give it a thought. Maybe we can discuss it on Thursday on a conference related meeting, but like if you want to do it, of course. But like I remember from the previous company that when I was working, when we had some new topics and designers were involved, they were sometimes organizing like not the guinea pig, don't remember the name, like user testing, but like in real life. So maybe we should use Async API conference for it. So maybe we could like on one of the days have a longer break and offer people like organize some place where they could come with their laptops, and we could do some user testing with them of some UIs for Async API community. Just
you mean like during the conference, like
just
like at the location?
Yeah, because like the schedule is not set yet.
Right.
It's really up to us, the community, how we'll shape it. Why not trying maybe having this like happy hour for like for this kind of session, maybe like just
that's actually a great idea. Yeah,
dropping an idea. Let's see.
Yeah, I like that idea.
Yeah.
And thanks, Schemas, for sending that schema in the chat.
But yeah, let's continue on Thursday. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining, and Missy for putting in a very important topic.
No problem. Yeah, thanks.
I didn't even notice when 40 minutes just passed like this. So it was a good topic, definitely.
Time flies when you're having fun.
And I even woke up a bit, just a bit. So
we have revived you.
So thank you again.
Now you no longer need the run.
What? Ah, yeah. I start my run at 8. I mean, in 1 hour. So I still have time to write the meeting minutes. Anyway, it's 2 past. Like, we should finish. Thank you everyone for joining. And yeah, join us again in 2 weeks under Ace wing.
Woohoo! Have a good vacation.
Thank you. Bye bye.